I am so excited to announce that iDriveAClassic is now sponsored by Adrian Flux, one of the UK's leading classic car insurers. If you're looking for classic car insurance, I've popped a link to Adrian Flux in the description box below. Hi guys, it's Steph from iDriveAClassic. Now today I'm back with something that you definitely weren't expecting to see on the channel. It's a Skoda Favorit. Now, I know that some of you are going to say to me, well, it's not really a classic. Well, I'm going to beg to differ because I think this is quite cool, it's quite retro, and do you know what? I cannot remember the last time that I saw one. I feel like they used to be everywhere. You'd see them in car parks, on your local high street, but nowadays, where are they all? Well, in today's video, I'm going to take out, in my opinion, one of the best Skoda Favorits in the UK for a test and show you what it's all about. I've been totally won over by this car, but I want to put it to you as well and hopefully win you over too. And best of all, it's a Blackline edition. There are only two on the road in Great Britain, and I think we've got one of the best. Well, there's only two, so let's head off and we'll give this car a whirl. We've been spoilt today with this Skoda Favorit. This example is probably as close to factory fresh as we're going to get, and I'm really excited to show you her, even though she's not that conventional classic car that I usually go for. And in fact, it's the very first Skoda we've ever had on the channel. So I thought we'd kick off with a model which was so important in the history of the brand. The Favorit came to market in an era where budget motoring was a really big deal. Many families possess the ability to now purchase a second car, and with that, a smaller, cheaper runaround was a firm favourite of the two-car household buyer. The Favorit really delivered in a way that Skoda's previous efforts hadn't. It was decidedly more modern. Gone was the rear-wheel drive, rear-engine setup, and in came the front-wheel drive, front-engine setup that so many buyers recognised and wanted. Plus, the 80s was when the car buyer could be more choosy. The days of cars with varying build qualities and quirks in the 70s were over, they were gone, because things like Japanese cars had arrived, and with that, the build accuracy had improved, and even Austin Rover at this point were boasting that they were using robots to make their cars. The 80s really was the era where reliability became more of a given than just luck of the draw. Whilst cars were, especially these cars, were a more modern take for Skoda, the budget element meant that things were kept nice and simple. There was only one engine option, the 1.3 litre, although the fuel injection models were available, and it was standard later on as it went through its life cycle. I think in fact the fuel injection was standard from the Mark II onwards. The fuel injection model was actually touted as a smoother yet crisper performance. Who knows what that even means? That is proper marketing spiel. Now, the Skoda Favorit wasn't particularly fast, and it wasn't particularly thirsty either, because you had that 1.3, so you'd be looking at a top speed of around 93 miles per hour and an around town fuel consumption of 35 miles per gallon, whilst on longer trips running a steady speed of 56 miles per hour, you'd see your fuel consumption improve quite a lot. So then it went up to around 51 miles per gallon. Now, although the car was a lot more modern and styling, the engine had previously been used in the Skoda Estelle. So realistically, Skoda weren't doing a massive leap for the existing Skoda customer. Although for someone that maybe hadn't bought a Skoda before, it did hit that sweet spot of being quite different. Now, whilst the engine stayed the same throughout the cars, give or take that fuel injection, the body style did not. You had a choice of 5-door hatchback, 5-door estate, and a 2-door coupe utility. And all of them across the board came with the same 5-speed manual gearbox. I'm going to show you that later on in the video. The car had varying degrees of popularity. So in the UK, I think we sold around 50,000 units, but in mainland Central Europe, the car was a massive hit. And in fact, it was one of the most popular cars of its day, and it was exported far and wide. So you could have spotted a Favorit everywhere, from Argentina to Bosnia to South America and even Turkey. So for a car that was essentially sold as a budget car, it did very well. Now, one of the things that they didn't skimp on was the design. So the car design was the brainchild of Bertone, which, if you aren't aware of who they are, it's an Italian automobile company who specialise in car styling. Now, I wanted to put that into context for you about how special that was, because previously Bertone had styled cars for really big names like Aston Martin, Mercedes, Lamborghini. So to have them on board for Skoda and to do the Favorit, it was a really big deal. And in fact, for me, it was a really big demonstration that Skoda were committed to delivering a more modern car for the buyer of the 1980s. Although interestingly, it was this partnership between Bertone and Skoda which slowed up the car coming to market. The development and concept had been kicked off in the early 80s, around 1982, but due to disputes, the car didn't actually get designed until 1985 and then into production in 1987. Now, obviously, I've only briefly mentioned Bertone. It's a massive thing, massive company. And if you're interested in car styling and Bertone, the book Bertone Masterpieces of Style is definitely one to add to your Amazon wishlist. It's a really interesting book. Now, I said at the start of this walk around that the Favorit was an important part of the Skoda history, and it really was, because as you may know, Skoda is now owned by VW, and it was the Favorit which really got VW interested and got the deal over the line. The sale happened actually halfway through the Favorit's production life, and I've heard rumblings, but haven't been able to substantiate these claims, that Favorits built under VW-owned Skoda are actually far better built. Now, before we head off inside, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about this Blackline edition. The Blackline was limited edition and available in hatchback or estate, and the spec was based on the GLXi. The car had decals, as you've seen when we were looking around the car, branded speakers, as I'll show you when we head inside, and of course the trim inside the car is unique to the Blackline as well. But if you are a Favorit enthusiast, you'll notice it's really similar to the Silverline editions. I also believe that the Blackline had slightly different backlights. I think they were smoked, so they were very slightly different to the standard Favorit. Now, currently on the website howmanyleft.com, which should always be taken with a pinch of salt, it says there's 101 Favorits taxed and on the road, and there are only 2 Blackline editions. Obviously, this has been a very brief overview, but if you want to read a little bit more about Skoda, a book that I'd recommend is Skoda, A Car That Made History. It's really great and it goes into a lot more detail, and it's definitely one that you could put in your Christmas stocking. Now let's have a better look at that dash, because I'm sure, like me, you're going to be surprised just how much car you got for your money. In fact, I wasn't that keen when I first set my eyes on it, and now that I've looked more into depth on it, I'm a lot more keen. So I want to get inside that car and show you a little bit more. So I thought this was really nifty. I found this in the boot. So it just slots in here to the side, and this acts as, so basically it's like a multi-purpose tool. So this acts as your boot light, and then this folds out into almost like a flashlight, like a beam thing, if you're in an accident or a collision or you've broken down. And then as well as that, it operates as a torch, so you just flip it around like that. Now at the moment, unfortunately, it's not working, but to say that Mick's had this car less than 6 months, it is on his to-do list. We always seem to shout about the same cars. Well, let's talk about the Skoda Favorit. It has so much to offer. So of course it is Bertone styled, which means that even today it doesn't look that dated. It looks very of its time. It's very muted, actually. It's very stylish, very sleek, very muted, and in fact it's the only Bertone styled Skoda that ever happened, so it's quite special in that right as well. And I feel like it came on massively from the days of the rear engine, rear wheel drive Estelle, and presented something totally different to both Skoda buyers and people that maybe hadn't thought about buying a Skoda before. So first of all, we've got quite a spacious glove box. There's lots of room in there, and it's compartmentalised as well. Again, very neat styling like that. And also worth pointing out as well that those speakers in the door are Blackline branded as well, which match the outside of the car. Now, as we come into the centre, we've got our heater vents there, and it is worth pointing out that the heater on this car is definitely the best out of any 80s or 90s car. It's just exceptional. Got a pocket for storage there. Not really sure what that was for. I guess it's probably for coins. Over here, we've just got a selection of buttons. So we've got our 2 light switches there, heated screen and hazard lights as well. As we come down, these are our heater vents, control all of that. A cigar lighter and ashtray there. Coming down into the stereo there. Now, this is a really interesting point to note that when the current owner bought the car, it had a CD player in. So he's taken it out and put this tape player in. Now, this isn't the correct tape player for the car. He is looking for the correct one, but to say he's not had the car very long and he's still done that switch over, I think it just makes it look a little bit less jarring than a modern CD player. Coming down there, we've got our cassette tape holder, which I will demo for you. But that noise rattling around would be lovely at high speed. And again, you've got just another pocket for a little bit of storage. Now, coming down here, we've actually got a little pad, so you can see there that it flips around. Now, this is actually for headlight adjustment. So if you're towing or you've got a heavy load in the back, you can adjust that up and make sure that the headlights are where you want them to be. It's little things like that on this car that I really wasn't expecting to see today. Really pleasantly surprised, actually. Now, coming in front of us, we've got a good selection of bits and pieces going on. Temperature gauge going into speedo, rev counter coming into fuel gauge over there. So another detail that I wasn't expecting to see today are front and rear fog lights. We've got those in here as well. And then all in all, this is a pretty good setup. So looking in front of us, we have got 2 stalks, really normal setup there. So really everything in here is very normal. Which is quite nice actually, because we take out a lot of bonkers stuff lately. It's quite nice to do something that's a bit more middle of the road. And to our left hand side, we've got our indicators and our main beam, and then we've got our horn there as well. So I'll try and demo that for you. It's a little bit feeble. I thought it was going to have a bit more oomph to it. Let me play it for you. Someone's going to come out of one of these units now and wonder what I'm up to. Now, on the right hand side, we've got our wipers. We've got 2-speed to the front. We have got a rear wiper as well. And we've also got wash, and it's all on that stalk. I feel like this would be a bit of a hubnut fantasy to have all these wipers all over different bits of the car. But anyway, nice little setup. And that's what we've got on offer. So as you can see, we've got everything that... realistically, everything you need from a classic that you'd want to be driving regularly. And it's all very well laid out. It's all very, I don't know, it just feels very sleek and very together. And altogether a lot more modern than some of the 80s and 90s stuff that we've been testing lately. So I want to take it out for you because for me, it's not just all the bits and pieces we've got going on in here where the car really excels. For me, the best bit about this car, and it should always be the best bit, is the driving experience. So why don't we head off? So we've got 5 gears on this one, which is great news. So really simple box actually, and it's so nice to drive with. It's just, as you can see, it's just an easy one to get into gear. Now reverse was a little bit tricky early, but we push that across and we bring that down. And there you go, lovely, simple and straightforward. So let's get her started up. And of course, with this being so modern, it is really quiet inside here, so we'll shoot it from the back as well. With 5 forward gears and a 1.3 under the bonnet, what kind of performance are we going to get out of this Skoda? Well, let's go and find out. And with that, at 50 miles an hour, we are up into the top gear, which is of course 5th gear on this one. So as we're up into that 5th gear, I'm just struck by how easy this car is to drive. And honestly, this is probably one of the easiest cars that I've got into and just driven away in months. It's simple, the handling is fantastic, as you can see. It's so light and it's so responsive in a way that not many other cars from the 80s and 90s I've taken out and could compare. And in fact, as you can probably see from the interior when we've had a look round, it feels, do you know, it feels, for the era, for its time, it feels very modern. This is a really well put together car actually. And it's funny because I remember when I was a child and growing up, you would hear people slag Skodas off. Oh, it's a Skoda. You know, Skoda even traded on that, you know, made a joke out of it that people would slag them off. But do you know what? This car is fantastic. I came into it with no expectation and I've been driving it now. So I always try and take a car out for a little bit of a drive before we film. And I did that today. And I did it because I thought, oh, you know, I haven't been in anything a bit more modern for a while. Let's take it out and get a bit of a feel for it. And you know, from the minute I turned the key and set off, I felt like I'd owned this car for years. It's so easy. There's nothing overtly remarkable that stands out that I could say to you, oh, it's that or it's that. It's a combination of things. So number one, my seating position is brilliant. It's that golden era where cars are close enough to modern cars that you get a lot of the frills of modern motoring, but far enough away that you can still work on them and you still get really good visibility. So of course your pillars, they're not as skinny as your 60s and 70s cars, but you've got enough visibility there to feel a real sense of confidence whilst you're driving. As well, of course, as that, it's that handling, it's that ultra light, ultra responsive steering. I mean, of course, we are in a really good example. It's got less than 20,000 miles on it from new. But if anything, that means this test is even better because we get a true representation of what the buyer got when they went to the forecourt and they tested one of these. I've tested out a lot of stuff from this era and some of it on similar mileage actually, and this example is just, honestly, it's just incredible. You see other stuff on this mileage and already it's got creaks and rattles and you see little bits where the age is starting to come through. But on this one, as you've probably seen on the walk round, it looks factory fresh. I imagine that you would have been happy to have driven one like as nice as this off the forecourt when it was new. And as well as that, maybe I've probably been in the marina for too long recently, but this is so quiet. The suspension is great. So just then we went over a pothole, but we don't feel that pothole in the cabin. We're not feeling that as we drive. And even right down to how the seat has been built and crafted, is honestly, just this experience is just wonderful. So there's going to be a lot of people watching this video, I like to call them armchair experts, who will say to me, oh, well, it's a Skoda and Skodas are rubbish and they're built really poorly and they're really unreliable. But, okay, let's look at it with a measured head on from when they were built to now. And I tell you what, this car, looking at it against other low mileage examples of cars of this era, this is really well built. I can't hear any knocks, I can't hear any rattles. It's as it was from the factory, so it's not like somebody's gone through and put a load of sound deadening in or replaced loads of bits. This is as it was, and I know that we're on less than 20,000 miles, but what an incredible car. And I think if you'd had a budget at the time and these weren't an incredibly expensive car, the level of motoring that it represents and that it gives you as the driver is brilliant. I'm really impressed. I came into this thinking that we might be rolling into something that was a bit tinny, that was maybe a bit lackluster, but I don't know. I didn't come into this with masses of high hopes or expectations, and I've been really blown away. From everything from the handling to the quality of the finish on the interior, because it has got a really good level of quality finish, just everything about it. And it's the first car in a while that I'm really struggling to find something I don't like about it. I think the only thing I don't like about it is that it's not really my favourite era. That's what I don't like about it. And it wouldn't be the car that I would pick if I was going for classics. It feels too modern. That's my only real criticism. So if you're at home and you're looking for a smaller car from the 80s or 90s and you want a bit of a club scene, it has got a club scene. They do regular Skoda meets. It seems to have, in fact, it's got a very good Facebook group. People were very helpful when I was asking questions. So it's got a good community. It's not the most expensive smaller car from the 80s and 90s you can buy. And I'll tell you what, it's far more pleasurable to drive than some of the other smaller cars that era. So it's been an interesting video to do because came into it with no expectations. I hope that if you're watching from home and you, like myself, have had no real exposure to Skoda from this era, but have heard no end of horrible things from armchair enthusiasts, I hope that this has helped sway you, because honestly, these cars deserve far more exposure, far more praise, and far more positive press, because it is a really nice car, and well, I've been pleasantly surprised. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and wherever you are in the world, I hope that you're safe, you're well, and until next time, take care and drive safely.